Rufus is Italian and do not want to be associated with the black race. Rufus states that this is insulting to be associated to the black race as an Italian. And instead of me getting upset with Rufus, I just want Rufus to explain what is insulting about being associated to the black race. I just want to know. And I want any other Italian to let me know if they agree with Rufus or if they disagree and why, or just let me know. What is so insulting about being associated with the black race? I just want to know. Like, let me know. I know that we still live in a time where racism is very prevalent. Very prevalent. And sometimes, no, it don't shock me. Let me not even say it shocked me, because it don't. As a black woman in America, I've experienced racism more times than I even want to admit. Oh, and I want any other Italian to let me know if they agree with Rufus or if they disagree and why, or
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so today's topic was brought about by a Black American woman who asked a very important question on TikTok.
Right, and she found herself trending on the Italian side of TikTok. Why? Because she was somehow made to believe that Sicilians of Italy have been given the black treatment because their ancestry allegedly dates back to North Africa.
Right, and for this reason, guys, we have prepared a presentation for you that I feel like is gonna make a lot of sense, and I just want you to compare this kind of treatment that they were given and compare it to where a majority of black population normally lives and what white people or white supremacy normally does to these neighborhoods, you know.
Right. The sad thing about such situations is when colonization really interferes with your mind, of course, there are people who will be successfully colonized. And also in this discourse, someone will come up saying that Sicilians should never be compared to blacks or black Americans or any Africans of sorts because they are not black people.
Right, guys, let's watch what we prepared for you and then we come back and talk about it. You can let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section. Also consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Let's watch.
I brought back out the Italian degree. Let's chat. Raise your hand if you've ever met a racist Italian. For the life of me, I'll never understand it. You actually sit down, open a book, and learn about Italian histories, you would understand that we faced very similar treatment and dealt with very similar experiences. Italians did not immigrate here for funsies, all right? We need to talk about what drove the Italians out of Italy to come to America. One anthropologist, Cesare Lombroso, said Southern Italians were more predisposed to criminal behaviors because they had African blood. Southern Italians have always had it the hardest in Italy, especially after the unification in the late 1800s. The Northern Italian government really didn't do anything to give Southern Italians a chance at thriving because they industrialized the North. They put all of their funding in the North. They took all of the South's resources. They took their land. I mean, a lot of our ancestors came over here not able to read or write, but that's not because they were stupid. It's because they weren't allowed to have schools. They didn't have schools. And if they did go to the North to try and redeem themselves and make something of their lives, they were met with total racism and discrimination because they were too dark, too lazy, too dirty. And of course, they turn around and they go to the United States, and what happens then? They have to change their last names to go find jobs. If we look at my grandfather, for example, his last name was Carusone. But what did they have to do? Change it to Carson. Because they would not be able to find a job with such an Italian last name. You need to understand, prior to the unification, the South was not what it is today. Naples had the first ever railway in Europe. In the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, they had the largest navy in Italy. They had fantastic agricultural exports, even had banks in their own currency. You have to understand that Southern Italians were genuinely screwed over. After the unification, the Italians in the South were completely stripped of all of their resources. Southern farmers no longer owned their land, meaning that even if they worked on that farm, they were no longer earning profits. I don't know about slavery, but that kind of does sound like slavery. The South was even taxed more than the North. For whatever reason, there wasn't one. The impacts of this you still see today. If you go to North Italy, okay, it's very industrialized. That's where you see a lot of the big corporations, a lot of jobs, a lot of people. It's very modern. You go to the South, it's the land of the lost because the government set them up for that. One politician from the North, Luigi Carlo Farini, said that South Italy was basically the same as Africa. He said, and I quote, "What are these lands? What barbarity? This is not Italy, this is Africa." In fact, they even had a slur for Southern Italians. If you've ever heard the word terrone, it's kind of like saying Southern hick, redneck, because they were that discriminatory towards Southern Italians. So this is my message to all of the Italian Americans. Do not forget your roots. Even after black slaves in America were freed, they still had to face challenges in society for decades and decades, and honestly still today. I'm never going to diminish what black Americans went through because they persevered through so many atrocities. And for someone who is Italian American to say, don't associate me with black Americans, it's just absurd.
Sicilians are the black folks of Italians. And from the comments, I could tell this is true. From the comments, every time somebody say, I'm not white, I'm Sicilian, I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. Because I'm like, what is Sicilian? Like, I had to Google it, tried to write it down, take a picture, like, and I just came up with the assumption from reading all the thousands of comments that this might be the realest thing. Okay? These are those Philly Italians, okay? These the Italians I know. Like I told y'all, Philly Italians is different. So, you know. You from Philly, and I'm sure the Bronx Italians are different too. Philly and the Bronx Italians, they different. Italians at TikTok, y'all need to come to the front again because y'all confused the crap out of me in the comments, okay? I'm trying to get us all a history lesson, and I am so interested to learn more. I got some people saying Italians are white. I got a lot of people saying Italians are Sicilian, Mediterranean. I learned a lot, okay? I read the comments, so I thank you guys. But I am still confused. Is it more cultural? Because I read comments that said Italian is a culture. It's more so like a culture. But you guys are white, but it's like a culture. Is that correct? Question mark. That's a question. Somebody stitched this video and explained it in detail. I had a couple stitches, but they're all different. Like, everybody's giving me different answers. So Italians of TikTok, give us a whole history lesson. I want somebody who is educated, somebody who knows the whole Italian history. Break it down to us because I've learned a lot by reading the comments. And I'm still reading. I probably read over 1,500 comments. The comments is like almost at 4,000.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section, yeah? You know, I googled real quick about the topic of today, and I saw that the reason why people from the southern part of Italy could have had ancestry from Africa was because between especially Tunisia, they used to get people from there to go like crossing over to each other's countries, right? So a lot of them share ancestral DNA, you know?
Yeah, from Tunisia. And my thing is, do these people know that even Tunisians themselves don't consider themselves Africans?
That's very important.
Right. As a matter of fact, a majority of North Africans, I don't know why they call themselves Africans. Maybe because they happen to find themselves in the continent. But even when it comes to trade, you don't hear much of them here on the continent because they've separated themselves so much from the regular melanated Africans. And another thing that really got me was when they were going to be oppressed by the northern Italy, right? They were considered barbarians because they had African blood. And this is the same narrative that is usually pushed onto the Black American community because they're black. And it is the very, very same narrative that was used it was pushed onto Africans because we were a predominantly black community.
Right. And then guys, can we talk about how the southern part of Italy was really prosperous and how
thriving.
It was thriving, how like infrastructural wise they had systems in place, you know, until the northern part of Italy, which considered themselves white,
unified themselves. I feel like they usurped the success of southern Italy, right? Because southern Italy, for you to have even built a railway line, for you to have the biggest army, the easiest way for them to conquer the south was for them assimilate or annex or unify the North and the South. And this just brought a very familiar, you know, idea that Trump proposed. He wanted to annex Canada. Until right now, I'm asking myself, what is the thing that Canada is doing right that they're, you know,
probably the resources, because Canada supplies America with electricity. And if you look at Italy, the southern part had resources that the northern part exploited in order to develop the north, you know. And the funny thing is that because I feel like how they use certain things to denigrate black people in order to dehumanize them, I feel like that is why everything they normally do works, because they started by saying, pushing those propaganda and narratives that the South are barbarians. They can't, like,
and they had a perfectly functioning society before they were unified with the North, you know. And then they purposefully made that neighborhood very poor. The same thing they've done in Africa.
The same thing they've done to Black America.
Right. And you know, my thought is, should they have let southern Italy grow to the point where it had started developing? Maybe southern Italy would have realized the kind of power they held, and they would have to govern themselves. So they were really treated bad to a point where they started migrating to America and changing their name to sound more English,
which is quite sad, you know. And you know what gets me is the kind of discrimination these people went through and racism, to the point where they couldn't get proper or decent education or jobs. When they go to the northern part of Italy to try and stand a chance, they literally stood no chance, you know, only for them to have to get out of the country for them to be able to stand a chance or match up or get just a decent education for their families, you know.
Right. And you know, right now the comment that was being discussed today of the guy calling himself Rufus, and Rufus really trended, man. So this guy who said, don't even associate us with the black race, it's an insult.
Oh my goodness.
Does this person even know their history?
I would really like to know from Rufus exactly why do you feel like
being associated to black community or Africans is an insult?
Although you have to look at it this way, yeah. Okay, from your lens, you view the black community as an insult, right? Yet, every day, the trends that people set are from the black community. You look at hairstyles, you look at dressing styles, you look at music, and a lot of, if it's not black American trending, I feel like there was an era where black Americans used to set the tone and pace for entertainment, and right now it's West Africa and South Africa, you know, they're setting the tone for trending videos. For example, people like Arya Star, you know, these are people when do songs, you know, the whole world hears of it. Even Koreans are talking about West African music, you know. So exactly what is it that is making you feel like you're being insulted when someone compares you to the black community, you know?
Not only compares but also associates. You cannot make these things up. No African walked up to you and said you're African. Your own DNA. Nobody is claiming you, Rufus, but your own DNA came out and said your ancestors are from North Africa. Okay.
But actually, you know, that really, you've said something very important. His ancestors are from North Africans. North Africans are not Africans.
Exactly the same way. They're Arabs who happen to be in the geolocation of Africa.
Exactly. So, to be honest, I don't really see...
okay, you know, growing up, I know for a fact, most Africans considered the whole of the continent as brothers and sisters until you grow up to a point where you realize that... okay, when you come to the Horn of Africa, the eastern part of Africa, you feel like some Somalis, most Ethiopians and most Eritreans, some Somalis, most Ethiopians and most Eritreans don't consider themselves black, they consider themselves Arab. And then you go to the very northern part of Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, you know, they also don't consider themselves black, they consider themselves Arabs and whatnot.
Exactly, of which when you look at even their phenotypes, to be quite honest, they really don't look like Africans, you know.
It's
begin
true.
With the skin, just phenotypically speaking, they don't look like Africans. That is why if they say they're not Africans, imagine Africans are not even begging them to, you know, to remain. They are normally told you should even leave the continent for the Africans who are here, right?
And if leaving the resources is the problem, cut that country and carry it, go with it. Anyway, guys, another thing I wanted to say, you know, For these people, the Arabs who call themselves Africans in the north, wherever else place, they are from Africa, but they don't want to claim the culture or be associated with other Africans. And what's really sad is that you find those Arabs who happen to be Africans, in order for them to feel good about themselves and not really associate any part or any way with them being Africans, is that they have to put the regular African, the one who looks like me, at the bottom of the barrel in order for them to feel like they have
themselves.
Yeah, in order for them to elevate themselves and feel like they have a stepping stone. And this is why their descendants over in America, the Sicilians of Italy, they also do the same thing, just so they can feel like they're not at the bottom of the barrel that the white supremacy system puts them at.
Right, and the way the politician who was bringing this narrative that the southern part of Italy are barbarians, and that is why that country it shouldn't even be called Italy. It
should be called Africa.
That is Africa, and
yet they're the very same people who are exploiting the resources that were in southern Italy, and they're using up those resources to build the north and deliberately leaving the south as it is.
Right.
Even worse.
Right. Also, you look at what they do in Africa and what they do in Black American communities, and I feel like all these people who call themselves white have the same ancestry, and they have the same characteristic and the same playbook, the same blueprint that they use in all these neighborhoods. And the sad part about this is that the Black community is left believing the propaganda they sell.
Yes.
They're left being divided. They're left in dilapidated states.
Yeah, and they're left feeling small, and that's why some of them will be bleaching. And other descendants of Black people who have been whiteified. Guys, when I say whiteified, I mean, for example, I marry a white person, my kid will be a biracial. She marries a white person, you literally wash the black out of your system, right?
Yeah.
So these people who have been whiteified, the DNA, as I said, DNA doesn't lie. You'll find that you have ancestry from Africa, but you feel so bad to be associated with an African because you've allowed yourself to self-hate on someone else's ideology of what is small and what is big.
That is so sad, because such people, I feel like it's just the lack of self-awareness. Because to be quite honest, right now, nobody can knock me down because I'm Black or because I'm African. I feel proud and I'm very happy to be who I am,
But then again, I feel like we have to give grace to those who are knocked down for them to build themselves up, because we have never really been in a predominantly white society. You don't know what it does to your psyche, for even those who want to reinvent themselves as not being part of the Black community or Black ancestry.
Although it's not to say that in our community, also in Africa, that we don't have that. There's a lot of Africans who move abroad, and they literally, from day one, when you land in America, you want to change your accent. You do not want anybody.
Kenyans
and Nigerians.
Nigerians can never get rid of that accent.
Do you know those ones who try to in Kenya we call it twang, talking like,
talking like the white person in America.
Like that. Yeah. We call it twanging. So even Nigerians do these things, I'm telling you. The only thing
Nigerian accent is so strong.
It's strong, and that is what I wanted to say. Even
Kenyans
if
know
they
how
do
to chameleon, even if they don't.
But Kenyans,
the funniest thing is when they go to these Western countries and they think they're blending, the Westerners always know that they're not the indigenous people of their own crowd. They're indigenous to Africa.
And Nigerians, like, their accent is so heavy that even the ones who go to UK, you hear them speak that
UK accent, but there is
accent.
Nigerian accent in it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And then the Nigerian accent is just like popping behind, So anyway, it's sad to say, but that is what it is. The anti-Blackness in communities have been drilled in so much that I feel like the white supremacy system is winning at the end of the day, because when you look at our today's society, I feel like every society has been affected by this, and that is why we'll always have these social issues, and things like discrimination will never end,
Yeah, and the Black community was really, they did a number on the Black community.
Not just Black community, anybody who's not white, and this is gonna be an issue for the longest time. That is why I feel like
the Black people, Black people realize their power, and until Africa rises. Because one thing I usually remember that Malcolm X said, until Africa rises, until Africa is respected, nobody on earth who is Black will ever be respected.
Right, and I feel like for this reason, I can't help but compare with the Chinese people. Chinese people, I feel like there was
They
a
didn't
point
even
in
have to
life
change themselves.
they didn't have to change themselves, just their economic standing and their, what do you call it, just their growth, you know, to show. I saw there was a bridge, not a bridge but a road that is being built by the Chinese government.
It has already been built
by the Chinese government, that goes under is that an ocean or a sea? I feel like it's an ocean,
and that technology is nowhere else in the
but
world.
in China. Such things make you respect Chinese people, you know. Africa, what will you ever build that will leave the world in awe, you know? Anyway, we are
African
gonna
president
leave it
are
there.
just farting in the office, doing nothing, corruption, stealing. African
Greed
president
is destroying the black community.
right, like
Their
as of
leaders.
right now, the only president that you can actually say is trying to work towards the progressive nature of their countrymen is Ibrahim Traore.
Right, guys, I don't know what you have to say about this video, but we'd really like to hear your opinion. Let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section. Also, consider subscribing if it's your first time here, right?
Right, road to 200,000.
Right.
Ooh.
Guys, oh, it sounds good when you say it, right? To 200,000 subscribers.
Right.
Anyway, guys, we'll catch you on our next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in.